Good morning. Anyone trying to sleep? Like really working on it to stay? You're so excited. It's like I can't get to my head to sleep. I'm really excited today because I do love to learn, and this is Dr. A and Dan are so brilliant in asking us as presidential and team global members to share from our hearts. Because if you share from your heart, how many of you agree you can't do the wrong thing? It's not about being perfect. It's about just trying to be in service. So here's my objectives for this talk. Number one is I want to teach you not only the principles of teaching, and Dan said it really well. He said, Greg, I want you to teach teachers how to teach. I said, okay, that's a good challenge. So we're going to talk not about teaching, but also the principles of learning, how people learn best, advanced learning skills. We're also going to talk a little bit about understanding the difference between presenting information and actually empowering people and teaching them how to take ownership. Next thing we're going to talk about as leadership is how to have fun and to create an experience. So my challenge to you is, number one, I do want you to take notes. But number two, I want you to kind of have an open mind, but also want to participate. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask for some involvement. So can I get your permission to get you guys involved and interact with you? Is that fair? Yes. Okay, great. And then the last outcome is it's really more of a challenge for you. And my challenge is I'm going to share you a handful of principles and ideas. I want you to pick one that resonates. I want to challenge you to learn it, live it, and teach it. How many of you agree that if you're learning something with the intention of paying it forward and teaching to somebody else, you're going to take it a little more seriously? True or false? Okay, so that's my challenge to you. Pick one that you're going to play with, you're going to learn it, you're going to live it, and then you're going to pay it forward and teach it to somebody else. So let's dive in. First principle I want to talk about is what we call teaching models. Dr. A and Robert Fritz and Dan are brilliant at this. We do this all the time. So let me ask you guys a question, and you guys tell me, what does this icon mean? And what does this icon represent? Healthy body? So just by that image, all of a sudden there's a concept that's transferred to relatable information. Icons, images, metaphors, and stories help people get what you're trying to explain. How many of you agree, teachers in the room, when you give somebody a model or an icon or a context, they get it faster, right? How about this one? What does that mean? And that has a whole series of lessons and components to that. How about this one? I love this one. What does this mean? Health coach what? Income. And then when you get to a certain level, you plateau. What does this represent? Team building. And that's where you have this upward momentum. So we have these different icons. Here's a great one. This is the one that's built my business and my team's business faster than anything else. What does that mean? What does this represent? The goals, the vision, what you want. What's this represent? What are these? Actions, projects. See, this is how people learn. So if you can learn how to do what your leadership is doing, you're going to be able to pay it forward and duplicate. Here's some of the benefits. Number one, people learn by making connections. I already said that. Number two, it's easier for you to duplicate. Second principle, teach in chunks. How many of you have ever gone to a presentation, or maybe you've given a presentation? This is my biggest struggle, is I have so many ideas and information that I'd love to share that oftentimes it's kind of like this. Are you sure they're absorbing all this? Now what I've learned about this is if you can give somebody, you bounce the ball, we talk about bouncing the ball. If you bounce them 100 balls, how do they feel? Overwhelmed. So if you bounce them like 3 to 5 balls, and that's also in teaching, if you can teach 3 to 5 topics, 3 is a great number. If you have more time, you can do 5. So the principle, the other idea here is if you give them everything you got, then what's left? They don't need anything more. So you give them what they need to move forward, but you leave them wanting more. Okay? Third principle, it's called participant-centered learning. The difference between a lecture is the lecture is going to broadcast information. True or false? How many of you have been in a boring lecture? There's lots of information, but you just so what, right? Participant-centered learning is you want to meet them where they are. People learn differently. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic. And this, the quote that I think it was Jaime Castro said, or no, it was David Miller from Confucius. You know, if they hear it, they forget it. If they see it, they have to remember it, the visual connection. If they do it, if they feel it, if they play with it, they own it. So participant-centered learning means getting people involved. And if you can use all three of those modalities, guess what? You're going to catch more people, because some people learn visually, some people, but if you tie them all together, that's the magic formula. So participant-centered also means getting them involved and keeping them engaged, because if they're involved, they're in the game. They're taking some ownership with you. So anytime you can do an exercise, for example, here's what we do in our trainings on Saturday. We have an ED panel of our people who are successful and are making it happen. And we bring them up and we have them share different things that they're good at, but what they share is based on the questions of the audience. So we're asking them, what are 3 or 4 things you guys need help with? And then our experts from different viewpoints and different vantage points share their ideas. What does that do? It gets people involved. We also have our teams, you know, we train them so they're doing more of the presentation. So we want to empower people. This one here, each month, one of the things we do, we call it a skill mill, but each month we teach a fundamental skill, for example, calling your 100 list. And then instead of, we teach the concept, but then we have an expert role play it and demonstrate it, see one, do one, and then teach one. So now what we do is we break into groups of 5 or 6 people. One leader at each table, and guess what the people at the table do? What do? Our choir director, I mean, practice, drill, and rehearse. Role playing, because if somebody role plays and they do it 3 or 4 times, what happens to their competency? What happens to their confidence level? Absolutely. So these are just fundamental principles. They're common sense, but as leaders, you have to be sure that you make these decisions and you build it into your training. Let's talk about building a talk or getting ready for a presentation. Sometimes Dr. A will say, Greg, Whitney, you're on in 10 minutes. You've got 20. I want you to cover this. So when that happens, my brain goes, oh my gosh, what do I got to do? Then I step back, take a breath, and I say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask myself, who's my audience? I'm going to ask myself, what are their needs, their wants, their fears, their concerns? What's my outcome? What's the message? Now, I knew what my message was. Dr. A and Dan said, here's what your outcome is. And they say, how much time do you have? That determines the next couple things. What are the most important topics to convey? And then here's the part about getting engagement. What story can I share to help them have an experience where they get it? What's a metaphor? What's a way that they can step into the picture? How many of you agree painting a word picture is one of the most powerful things you can do as a teacher, right? So let's talk about that. Here's an example of this. How many of you saw this movie? Or even the first one? And one of the things that I love about this movie, it's a great movie, by the way, new one, I thought it was phenomenal. But it's like the young guy, he's all excited. He convinced the master to teach him Kung Fu, and he was so excited and a little bit cocky. He went in there and he started showing the guy all his moves. He's going to kick, and he's got these like ideas of what he's going to do, what his idea of karate was. This reminds me of a story that some of you may have heard before. And the story is of that. It's a teacher who finds a master, and the master says, our first lesson is we shall have some tea. And he sits down with the student and he pours him a cup of tea, halfway, 3/4, completely full, and just keeps pouring. And it's overflowing. And the student says, wait a minute, the cup is full. And he goes, it is time for your first lesson. Your cup is so full of what you know, there is no room for my wisdom. In order for me to teach you, you must empty your cup. Another great movie, Yoda, said the same thing to Luke Skywalker. Half of this weekend, Robert's been trying to do what? Get us to unlearn the stuff that's holding us back. This is a fundamental principle called being what? Being coachable. Yeah, put aside your concepts. So what's one of the biggest obstacles? Right there, an unchecked ego. If you're not coachable because you have your ideas of how to do things, the coach, the mentor doesn't have room. So one of the things I believe is to be a great leader, you must first be a good what? Follower. And that's true. So what a good follower does, and a good leader, a good master will teach fundamentals, the basics over and over again. So what he did, he said, hang up the jacket, drop the jacket, put on the jacket, take off the jacket, hang up the jacket, drop the jacket. Put on. For 7 days, he was growing crazy, ready to give up. And then Jackie Chan started throwing punches at him. And all of a sudden, out of instinct, he started blocking and moving because it was ingrained into him. Teaching fundamentals and fluency, mastery, some of the scientists that I've read and studied say it takes 10,000 repetitions to become fluent. Whether it's violin, whether it's public speaking, it doesn't matter. Fluency, mastery takes time. Would you agree with that? So commit to, really working at this. Don't be enamored by the fancy, glamorous things. Work on the fundamentals. Let me share with you one of the fundamentals that's critical in our business. You guys have seen this. Anyone know what section this is in the blueprint? Section 12. This is Dan and Dr. Ray have been teaching this for a long time. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of how it works and what the concept is. So this represents the trust, respect triangle. This is you, and who's this? These are your contacts. This is your expert. He said earlier, between you and your expert, there's a level of trust. You make a call, they'll answer it. You ring on the door, they'll open it. They know you, they trust you, but also sometimes when you know somebody for a long time, any of you married find that sometimes you trying to get your message across to your significant other and for some reason they can't hear it from you, but somebody else says it and all of a sudden the lights go off? So what's called the law of familiarity. Familiarity breeds what? I wouldn't go that far, but bottom line is, the more familiar you are, the less likely you have that same level of respect. Sometimes the third party, even if they're not an expert, gets more respect from a stranger. So between you and your contacts, there's this trust. What you need to do is you need to help develop that respect by using a concept called what? Edification. Edification means to do what? What does it mean? To hold in esteem, to build up. So what your job is, your number one job is to get this person in front of your expert and to build them up, edify your expert so when they get there, they're salivating to hear what your expert has to say. Your next job is to sit down, shut up, and be coachable. Here's one thing that I've seen happen more often, and it always derails the model, is that the coach who's bringing in the guest, they have this prospect, they want to be involved, right? And what do? They want to jump in, they want to share. Now, their intentions are good, but they're jumping in, and what happens is, now the mentor, the master who has a flow, has a strategy, they're trying to build rapport. They're trying to find out what they want. They're trying to get clear on their why. They're trying to help them see their current reality. They're walking through. They are the master. You got to allow them to do it. So you step back, and your job, it's OJT. It's on the job. It's earn while you learn. This is a blessing. This is a gift. Watch the master do it. Take notes. Then practice it, because guess what? When you match trust and respect, that is a magical formula. Now, so as your mentor is going to go through and build up and explain the concept or invite them to participate in the business or teach them how to get started, whatever that third party is, you can use this for anything. Matter of fact, does the third party have to be your direct sponsor or mentor? How many of you found in this meeting so far, and I have several of my teammates come up and tell me this, Dr. Child, even people who are really good global directors and people who are successful, say, Greg, I know you've been telling me this for like 6 months, but I was talking to somebody else over coffee, and all of a sudden I got it. Third-party credibility is magic. Don't underestimate the power of it, because what will happen is, at some point, you and your expert, their job, one of their final jobs is to edify you, to build you up, to show them that this is a team environment. Because now what you've done is you've modeled something called teamwork. So when this person becomes a coach, and they're here, and they're bringing their contacts to you, guess what happens? You duplicate. And now you have a duplicatable model for building your business and passing along knowledge and wisdom. Does this make sense? How many of you, if you're honest with yourself, aren't utilizing this as much and as well as you could? If you don't know how to do three-way calling, that's one of the most fundamental skills you got to have is three-way calling. But learn from your mentor how to set it up, how to do a three-way call. There's some elegance to it. So my final thing is, why commit to mastery? What we do is critically important. Years ago, 8 years ago, this is my little sister Leslie, by the way. And 8 years ago, she started on Medifast because I was a diet coach, and I didn't know any better. And I got her to lose like 60 pounds, but guess what? She went back to her old ways. She gained it back. I didn't have the habits of health. I didn't have the skills I needed. But if you master your skills, if you become fluent as a health coach, fluent as a business coach, fluent as a business leader, The transformation that you can give to somebody is unbelievable. Now you go from somebody getting a healthy body to being able to help somebody, like this is Dr. Larry Regina. And this is a guy who loves to practice medicine. He's OBGYN. He loves to practice medicine, but he didn't have a tool to help his patients. So now he's been transformed because of these principles that we've been talking about today. Now there's another doctor here. This is Dr. Scott Corliss. And what was interesting about him is that he was actually tired of medicine. He was dreading going to work. He was thinking about going to see a psychologist, how to deal with the stress of managed care. But this business now has given him an ability to pursue his dreams, which is now he's a full-time health coach. He retired from medicine, and he's doing this full-time, and he has more time to do the things he loves to do, which is to climb mountains. And then the final slide I have for why I do this is what a blessing it is for us to be able to work with the people we love and to transform in every area of their life, the trilogy: healthy body, healthy mind, healthy finances. To be able to travel the world and do the things. This is in Cancun, one of the incentive trips. This is Whitney. You can see just the excitement in her face, her first time there. And you know, it's pretty cool when you have a business that is doing such good work and we get compensated so amazingly. We went to Europe for 3 weeks in August, had our best month ever, because we've developed leaders and we've developed people that know how to do it with or without us. They're empowered. So my challenge to you is, why to commit to mastery? This says it all right here. This is John Wooden. Everything in the world is passed down. Every piece of knowledge is something that has been shared by somebody else. If you understand this as I do, mentoring becomes your true legacy. It's the greatest inheritance you can give to others. It's why you get up every day to teach and to be taught. So in closing, I guess I would say that for me, Dr. A described it perfectly, I do have an insatiable desire to learn, but I can't learn without teaching. I have found that for some reason it's this like giving principle that as I learn, and I've learned so much this week. How many of you have learned phenomenal things this weekend so far? Transformational things. That's great. Learn it, live it, but what's the most important step? Teach it, pay it forward. That's our legacy, that's our responsibility, that's our challenge, that's our call as leaders. So in final thing, I just want to say thank you to Dr. A for giving me my life back. And actually all of you guys. I mean, this is a family. It's really a true privilege to be up here. Not just to be up here on stage to share something that's important to me, but to be amongst a group of people that I absolutely love. So this is my before. Some of you don't know this. This is 2002, March. I was 50 pounds overweight, trying to exercise, didn't lose any weight. Got in the program, lost 50 pounds.